All right, it's Bengals, 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 Bengals. That's all everybody and anybody's talking about. One of our favorite guys is Jay Morrison. We read his stuff all the time at The Athletic. It's as good as it gets. And I got to tell you, just looking at him, and he's about to come on the screen, it is a man after my own heart. You may know, Jay, that we broadcast from Chatterbox Sports right here in Hamilton, Ohio, right?
That's right.
Your hometown.
Yes.
And look at that pullover. Does it get any better than that?
Proud grad.
I know you are. It's nice to have you with us. Thanks for your time today. How you doing today?
I'm great, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing great. Look, it's the talk of the town. We know Lamar Jackson is not going to play. I'm kind of curious before we get into the game itself. What's your point of view on this whole Lamar Jackson thing? We know he's a free agent at the end of the year. They can franchise him if they want, and I would bet money that's what they're going to do. I'm wrong a lot, so says my wife. But what's your thought about this whole sort of thing that's gone on dating back to week 13 when he originally got hurt?
Yeah, it's kind of dangerous territory to level accusations that these are business decisions. Nobody knows his body better than he does. Obviously, you kind of have to take him at his word. I've done interviews with Jeff Zrebeck, who covers the Ravens for us, and he said, Lamar's not a guy that's going to fake anything, and he's still limping when he walks around the facility, and there's still swelling on that knee, and there is an issue there. So it's not so much about motivation. The big question here is spinning it forward. And you mentioned it, the franchise tag to me seems like the only route. How can you pay this guy, even if it's not Deshaun Watson type of money, any kind of franchise quarterback type of money, when you don't know that he's going to be there for you? I mean, this didn't just happen this year. It happened last year. He wasn't able to play a lot of games at the end of the year. And it was really, you don't want to say the writing was on the wall, but there was a lot of questions about his style of play. Would he be durable enough to withstand all those hits with all those designed runs? And now maybe you're seeing that answered. And I don't know how any franchise can give a 3, 4, 5, a long-term deal for all that money. And by the way, they just made one of their linebackers, Roquan Smith, the highest paid linebacker in NFL history, with a 5-year, $100 million deal. So that's gonna make it harder too to give Lamar a longer term deal. I think Lamar hurt himself by not having an agent. He probably should have got something done this offseason. He was holding out for even more. He wanted higher money, and it's kind of bit him now. He's going to get paid handsomely next year, but beyond that, nothing's guaranteed.
Tell me the difference, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, what's the difference between Tyler Huntley and Anthony Brown?
One can throw the ball and one can't. I mean, that's basically. I mean, Tyler Huntley's not going to scare you with his arm, but anybody that watched that game Sunday with Anthony Brown, it wasn't just, throws off target. His receivers didn't help him. I mean, his receivers had a number of drops, but just the decision making, standing in the end zone, patting the ball, and then he gets sacked by Trey Hendrickson and fumbles. And that was a huge swing right there, right before halftime. Drew Chrisman had punted the ball, a 59-yard punt down to the 5. You're thinking the Ravens will just smartly run the ball 3 times, go to halftime, and no, they try to throw the ball with an inexperienced quarterback, and he stands in the end zone, doesn't have that clock in his head, gets sacked, gives the Bengals a touchdown. I don't think there's any way possible the Ravens win that game if Anthony Brown's the quarterback. I do give him a puncher's chance if Tyler Huntley is the quarterback, but Tyler Huntley has tendonitis too. He has not had a full practice this week. He hasn't had full practice for a few weeks. So you're not going to get 100% Tyler Huntley. This just feels like it's shaping up really well for the Bengals. That's a great Ravens defense, but I don't see any way this Ravens offense gets to 20 points on Sunday.
What are your thoughts, Jay? I mean, you're around this team each and every day, and your employer. I give the Athletic Pub all the time. I'm a subscriber. They're not a sponsor of this show, but I think it's the best thing that's happened if you're a sports fan that's come down the track in a long, long time. So you guys are able to write extensively, in depth, as you do on a daily basis. From a macro standpoint, you were covering the team last year as the playoffs began. They finished 10-7. They knew they were going to have to be on the road after a home playoff game, just the way it's set up so far, it looks like this year, barring upsets. What's your overall feeling about this team and where they are now compared to the team last year going into the postseason? All things considered, health, attitude, outlook, whatever it might be.
All of it better this year than last year. I mean, remember last year at this time, the conversation was, can they win a playoff game? Can they stop this 30-year drought and finally win a playoff game and advance? This year, they know, and we had a story up yesterday where we talked to a bunch of players and coaches about what they took away from that run last year, what they maybe learned about playoff football that they didn't know going into last year. And they know they can do it. They've done it. And it's just a totally different mindset this week than wild card week last year. This whole week hasn't even felt like a playoff week, honestly. Maybe it's because of the huge point spread and the issue with Lamar, and it feels almost like a foregone conclusion the Bengals are going to win this game, but it's been a very relaxed locker room. It's just felt like a week 11 or week 12 type of game where the guys are loose and joking around and not on edge about answering questions about snapping jinxes and that kind of thing. But it's a better roster. It was similar last year because they were on a run. But if you remember that as soon as the calendar flipped to December, they lost that game to the Chargers, and then they overcome a 14-point deficit against the 49ers, force overtime, lose in overtime because Zach Taylor took the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands in overtime. And from that moment on, decided not going to take the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands. We're going to ride with him. And you see him go on this incredible streak. And now 8 games in a row to end the season. They've been playing terrific. And it's not like they're going out and stomping teams. They are finding whatever way they need to win games, whether it's jumping out to a lead and holding on, falling behind and coming back like they did in Tampa Bay, using the running game, using the passing game. There's whatever it takes to win a game. These guys seem to have it in them to do it. And that's a great sign of a growing coaching staff. A lot of people forget that, this is just year 4 for both coordinators and for Zach Taylor. Coaches can get better just like players can. And this roster, really the big thing this year, and I said it at the beginning of the year that I thought that they would be better this year, but I thought the AFC was going to be better, so I wasn't sure if the record was going to be better. And it felt like a Super Bowl caliber starting 22, but I wasn't sure if it was a Super Bowl caliber 53. They've proven me wrong on that. Anytime DJ Reader goes out, yep. Jamar Chase, anybody that goes out, they've found guys to come in and play just as well. Maybe not just as well as the elite guys, but the drop-off has not been much at all, and they've just found a way to keep the train rolling.
Rather than getting so much into X's and O's about Sunday night's game, I want to ask you a couple of big picture items here, Jay, because No. Let me back up before I get to that. What is the confidence level of the 2 new starters along the offensive line?
Theirs or mine?
Both. I'd rather hear yours. I mean, they're going to give us a company line. What's yours?
Yes. I do. I trust what we're hearing from the coaches. They've been very pleased with what they've seen from Hakeem Adeniji so far since he's replaced La'el Collins. La'el went out with the ACL in the New England game, so it hasn't been a big sample size, but Adeniji gave up the fewest pressures of any offensive lineman last week against that Ravens defense. And I think the big question mark in a lot of fans' minds is Max Sharping. A lot of them aren't even really sure who this guy is. He's a 3-year starter in this league. He started 3 years with the Houston Texans. Because he started so many games on that rookie deal, he earned what the NFL calls the proven performance escalator, and his salary for this year jumped to $2.5 million. And the Texans didn't want to pay that. They didn't think anybody else was going to pay that, so they waived him at the cutdown day, figuring nobody would claim him. They'd pull him back and have him for a 4th year as a starter on a lower contract. Well, the Bengals saw it because they managed the cap so well and had the space available. They saw it as a great opportunity to add him as an insurance policy. Didn't need him all year because the Bengals started the same 5 guys for the first 15 games of the season, and now they've they've had to make changes. But Max Sharping is a quality offensive lineman. He's not on Alex Kappa's level, but it's one of those situations where you're not going to see a severe drop off. He's going to come in, he's going to play well, he's going to make mistakes, but I think this team is good enough to overcome it. And we talked about the way to fix this offensive line last year because of all the hits that Joe Burrow took. You don't have to build an elite offensive line. You just can't have any donkeys. If you have one bad guy, the defense is going to find him and exploit him. And plugging in Max Sharping, he is as far from a donkey as you can get. He's a quality offensive lineman in this league. He's been here all year. He hasn't played, but he's been here since week one. He knows the scheme. He knows the offense. He knows the guys he's going to be playing next to him. I think he's going to play well.
All right, on to the big picture stuff here. I guess technically the Bengals are allowed to start negotiating a long-term contract with Joe Burrow. How soon do you think they start to look into that? They wait till the end of the year, I would assume. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. But do you think that's something that takes place this offseason? Because they can wait a little while if they so choose, right?
Yeah, day after the Super Bowl, they're allowed to start. Who knows how soon? I'm sure Joe's going to want to get away. I'm sure the Bengals are going to want to reassess the entire roster. But I do think we see that get done before training camp, at least, maybe even before that. It's a foregone conclusion that they're just going to hand him a blank check. And they're keeping him here. There's no way that guy's going to get away. I don't think Joe Burrow's a guy that's going to hold it over and ask for something unreasonable. Yes, probably going to be the highest paid quarterback in NFL history, but it's not like he's going to skyrocket past what Deshaun Watson is getting. I think he's smart enough to know that you still have to have pieces around you. I think it's going to be structured in a way that's going to allow them to do that. And maybe the Bengals step out of their comfort zone a little bit and backload it a little more than they typically do with these contracts. But that's priority number one, because that dictates what happens with everything else. T. Higgins is eligible for an extension. Logan Wilson is eligible for extension. You have no safeties under contract next year. You have no tight ends under contract next year. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done in the offseason, and priority A1, not just because of who Joe Burrow is, but because of what the contract is going to be, how it's going to set up the balance sheet. That has to get done first before they can make all these other decisions.
I mean, Jay, they can't keep them all. And I think that's the one thing that so many Bengals fans are already talking about. And, I mean, look, the playoffs are starting, and you would think that's where all the focus is. But everywhere I go, it seems like people are saying, who's going to go at the end of the day? You can't keep them all. You can't keep Burrow. You can't keep Higgins. You can't keep Chase. You can't keep Boyd. You can't, fill in the blank. And so your point about you got to start with Burrow and figure out what you got left after that. Chase, priority number 2 ultimately, or Higgins?
Yeah.
Because of the timing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see them extend Chase next offseason. Higgins is eligible for an extension this offseason, but he still has one more year on that rookie deal, and they could do something crazy and franchise tag him for a 5th year. So it's not imminent that he's leaving, but I think the main goal of this franchise is to have Burrow and Chase together for the duration of their career. Can they do it? I don't know. I mean, Green Bay couldn't afford Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Kansas City couldn't afford Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes. That's a big ask. If you're going to pay your wide receiver and your quarterback among the top in the league, it doesn't leave a lot for everybody else. And there are going to be hard decisions. I did say they don't have any safeties under contract. Dax Hill, obviously the first-round pick last year, is going to be under contract for 3 more years. You would think Jesse Bates is gone because of that. That's why they drafted Dax Hill. Logan Wilson eligible for an extension. Whether they get that done or not, we'll see. But Jermaine Pratt, who's played incredible this year and deserves a big contract, I don't know that the Bengals can afford to keep him. The whole beauty of having Joe Burrow play the way he has on this rookie deal is that you get to have all these pieces around, and now it's going to get a lot harder, because you really have to draft well and develop guys, because if you start missing in the draft, it might create a hole you can't dig out of, even with a guy like Joe Burrow. So that was what was interesting about his quote, because you see this window, this great window closing a little bit because of the rookie contract's going to go away and he's going to be making all this money. And he made the comment after the game on Sunday that the playoff window is his entire career. And I'm sure he believes that, but it's going to be harder to do once he's making all that money.
Before we let you get out of here, and I know you got to run, you're heading down to practice.
Yeah.
End of the day this weekend, I think we all agree John Harbaugh one day will be in the Hall of Fame. Guy's a great coach, and they have got a really good defense. There's no doubt about that. Is it a great defense? It's been a lot better, obviously, since Roquan Smith came on board. They've been very impressive. Is this your typical sort of AFC North kind of game? What I mean by that is, tight, low scoring, coming right down to the fourth quarter kind of a game, or do you not see it that way?
No, I do see it that way. I think it's going to be close. I think the Ravens defense is good enough to keep it that way. The only thing that I think might differ, because you think of these AFC North games as the smash mouth type of football where it's kind of gone away, where teams don't run the ball the way that the AFC North teams typically do. The Bengals, and this is another issue with Kappa and Collins being out. They were their two best run blockers, and the Bengals for 8 or 9 weeks they were the most efficient run game in the league. Now, they weren't running for tons of yards like the Ravens do, but when they ran the ball, they were getting 5 and 6 and getting into 2nd and 4 or 3rd and short. Everything was efficient and working, and it has not been there. They've been one of the least efficient running teams the last 3 weeks, and I can see them, that lesson from last year with San Francisco, don't take the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands. If that run game, if Baltimore's stuffing it early, I think you're going to see Joe Burrow throw an awful lot of passes, and a lot of those are those short checkdowns to Mixon and P. Ryan that are basically extensions of the run game. But Ravens are going to run it. We know that. They are going to smash it at Cincinnati, try to shrink the game, run the clock. I'm not sure you're going to see the Bengals do the same. This might be a game where they let Joe Burrow cook, and that doesn't really jive with the AFC North mindset. But close, low scoring, coming down to the end. Yes, if Tyler Huntley plays. No, if Anthony Brown is the quarterback. I think the Bengals win this easily if Anthony Brown is the starter on Sunday.
Jay, can't thank you enough for your time and your insight. Your stuff is incredible. I, in fact, referenced you yesterday, that article about the run game, and the stuff you come up with is just fantastic. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and have a good weekend.
Thanks for having me on, Thom.